In this culture, the rivers, we have not seen them as just water bodies. We have seen them as life-giving gods or goddesses. To a thinking mind, which can think only within the limitations of its logic, this may sound foolish or very rudimentary. While a river is a river, how is it a goddess? What we call as water, what we call as air, what we call as food, what we call as the earth that we walk upon, these are not commodities, these are life-making material.
How do we measure our connection to the environment around us? Mountains, forests, deserts, and rivers help form our cities, towns, and cultures, yet many of us take for granted the importance of these natural resources. Through the heart of Paraguay flows its main artery, the Rio Paraguay, the fifth largest river in South America. Passing through 4 countries, Bolivia, Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina, it is a vital resource to the region. What to many is just a flowing body of water, to others is their livelihood. But how much does a river mean to a country that has no access to the sea?
The river is a story of not only Paraguay, but Paraguay's relationship to the outside world. Paraguay's relationship to communities both upstream and downstream.
You know, everybody views the river in a different way. Like you speak to the nurse in Pasay Patria and she sees it as waterborne illnesses, or a fisherman and that's his livelihood, or you know, an intendente would see it another way, or an owner of a factory would see it in a completely different way. So that's kind of part of what we're doing this project for, just figure out what does the river mean to you specifically.
Every time I think people are moving away from the importance of the river in their lives and they don't see it. And as we all lose a connection to many other important natural things that we depend on, like forests, like wetlands, we also have progressively moved away from our relationship with the rivers.
Our urban lifestyle creates a disconnection and hinders our understanding to the significance of the river for those who cherish it most. Henry and Jeff are 2 Americans who served 2 years as volunteers in Paraguay for the Peace Corps. Their connection to the river during their time living in rural communities inspired them to organize a 6-month excursion, beginning at the northernmost part of the Rio Paraguay and traveling down to the southernmost part of the country. During their travels, they will be stopping along the way in different river communities, providing them the opportunity to better understand the importance of the river through the eyes of those who are most closely connected to it.
How did this crazy idea to take a 6-month journey on the river come about for you guys?
A lot of times, at least in our experience, when you look at a lot of the environmental issues, economic issues, things are put in a much larger context and it's not humanized, there's no personal connection there. And so the whole idea behind Rostros del Rio is to put a face to this large swath of land, this body of water, this huge resource that we have here in Paraguay, and to kind of put it in a human context. So it's a very human-driven story.
Well, the idea of Rostros del Rio is exactly that, to just learn about all the different Rostros del Rio Paraguay, you know, visiting community from community, and just figuring out what life is like really on the ground in the local culture and in the local communities.
Yeah. Jeff and I both have a professional and personal connection to this country, and so I feel very less foreign than I did 2 or 3 years ago in Paraguay. We feel a very deep connection to this country, and I think a lot of the development of the project and the idea is rooted in that personal connection that we feel to Paraguay. Jeff, over the course of his 2-year service, really developed a close connection to one specific riverside community. And then through our research for this project, we realized that a lot of the stories that Jeff heard, a lot of his experiences are, on the one hand, very unique to that specific community, but a lot of the issues, when viewed in a more global context, are all related and all interrelated and all connected to the Paraguay River.
I want to learn a little bit about all the prep you've had to do.
Sure.
I don't know, it's probably been quite a few months figuring things out, right?
Yeah.
So walk me a little bit through the process.
These are the maps that we acquired from the Paraguayan Navy.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're pretty accurate, and we have printed versions in case our technology fails us, but we've also got a GPS and this here is a radio to communicate with the large barges that go up and down the river.
We'll probably start on the river bright and early, 5:30, somewhere right when the sun comes up. And hopefully we'll be at our destination by midday before the sun gets really hot. And the idea of the wooden rowboat is because we wanted to be able to go nice and slow with the current of the river, you know, having this Paraguayan-made rowboat would be really good for connecting with the local inhabitants. It's a boat that looks just like any other fisherman's boat, and so that was really important for us in decision.
It's going to be a really interesting journey, obviously, but I mean, I imagine you haven't done anything like this before. So is there anything that you're kind of like a little bit apprehensive about?
Jeff and I have really big goals for the research that we want to accomplish and the photography and the storytelling. And I really hope and expect to do a good job with that. But it's also nerve-wracking as well because it's kind of our first big gig doing storytelling.
Yeah. So. I think for me, this project is totally a marathon, not a sprint. It's going to be 6 months. It's a long time. And so we'll be out in the sticks. We'll be visiting the communities along the way. And it's just keeping a really good, positive mindset and just being really positive throughout the entire trip. I think that's probably going to be, you know, there's definitely going to be low points or bad weather or we missed something or we could have done better in it on other times. But I'm really confident in Henry and our abilities. I think we've got a really good relationship so far with this project, and I think, you know, just keeping that positive mindset throughout.
Extending 2,550 kilometers, the Rio Paraguay has played a huge role in the development of Paraguay. From the country's beginning, this river has been the main source for commerce, food, and transportation. Paraguay was once considered a superpower in the region of South America. However, conflicts such as the Triple Alliance War in 1864 with neighboring countries stripped Paraguay of much of its wealth, and the country was left to reconstruct itself, with the river continuing to be one of the most important resources in doing so.
Certainly during the years of Francia, during the first few decades of independence, leading up to the war, Paraguay was a relatively self-sufficient state, right? So while there was interaction between Paraguay and downstream cities like Buenos Aires or Montevideo, at times the river was blocked, impeded by political conflict, and Paraguay was able to keep moving forward because it was relatively autonomous, right? It didn't have to depend as much on the river, despite the river's importance throughout Paraguayan history. It's hard to think about what the river means, right? For most people, that's exactly what it is. It's a river. It's a body of water that flows past your community, flows past Asuncion. But the river really tells a story about Paraguay and its place in the world.
Yeah, I mean, the river connects so much as far as, you know, people, culture, lifestyle. The river goes throughout the entire country. You know, there's not a lot of countries that have a body of water that literally passes throughout the entire country.
It cuts through the center of the country.
Yeah.
And if you look at old maps of Paraguay, the old cartographers showed the Rio Paraguay in various ways. Kind of the early maps showed the river as this wide body of water with islands stretching all the way up to Asuncion, depicting the importance of the river, right? It was this great inlet into what was then Paraguay. And if we follow that theme, thinking of the river as the great inlet to Paraguay, the great connector, I think we get a better sense of the country as a whole and its place on the regional and world stage.
Lakes and rivers make up just 1% of the world's water, yet they are so vital to all life and living organisms. The water cycle depends on these bodies of water, and we depend on the water cycle. Due to climate change and increased ocean water temperatures, extremes and disasters that once occurred every century are now occurring almost annually. What needs to be done in order to care for these bodies of water that give us so much? Is it the responsibility of our governments, or the responsibility of the individual that matters most?
Thinking about governments. It's not just one country. Even if our country decides to have the best management of the Paraguay basin and we invest millions of dollars helping not to pollute the river or having the good practices so that there's not runoff of pollutants to the river, we can do excellently as a country here. But then we have Brazil, and then we have Bolivia. So we depend more on them, on what happens in our water quality currently. So it's also working with governments, also bringing the governments together to say, okay, we have to take care of this public good, and to assume for a government that something is not only theirs, that's complicated, no? We know the natural rhythm of the river, we know the levels of the river, we know how high it can get, we know the vulnerable places, and we should act on that, and not just every 2 or 3 years just move the people out of the floodplain and then let them go back, right? We should provide solutions, of course, housing and other options for these people. But as you can see, it's a problem of planning, no?
Sure.
Of lack of planning.
Okay.
This river crosses our country and it goes from north to south. It's our backbone. It gives us a huge, tremendous amount of benefits. We really depend on it. And to understand why it is important, not just to see the productive part of landscape managing, not just think about money in a short-term time frame, but also to see a longer perspective of having a healthy system and to live in a good quality place.
Our place in this world as human beings does not grant us the right to do what we wish with the environment that surrounds us.
How can we be offended, for example, by things like deforestation in the Chaco, or we can be offended by the fires that are happening now, and not be offended by what we do every day by polluting our rivers that are right next to our houses.
We have a great responsibility and debt to the natural resources that have provided us with so much. Our connection to these elements is what allows us to flourish as a species, and our connection to each other is what makes us human. However, without understanding the importance of these crucial resources and acknowledging their role in who we are in our history, we are endangering what our future relationship with this planet will be. It is our responsibility to take care of that which gives us life, and understand that at any moment we could be left without it.